There are lots of reasons a Magic card becomes banned. But what happens when a banned card, well, it starts to make a comeback? There's lots of amazing Magic the Gathering cards out there. Now, some of these cards over time become broken, abused, monstrosity machines that are just detrimental to gameplay, and for whatever reason, Wizards of the Coast, they decide to ban these cards. Whether they're expensive or not doesn't seem to matter. They're just going in for the jugular to make sure this card doesn't disrupt gameplay. Welcome back, everyone. MTG Moxman here, and thank you again for hanging out today for another video. Now, whether we like it or not, Wizards of the Coast, the old rules committee, they made some crazy rulings sometimes, and many of them have been actually spot on, depending on what path you're taking. Now, when the rules committee did their last banning, they banned some very big cards. They banned things like Mana Crypt. They took away Jeweled Lotus. They took away cards that were high-value targets that a lot of people didn't agree with. Now, because of the fallout of what happened with that rules committee decision, the backlash that followed, Wizards of the Coast took over Commander. They stepped in to help out. They started bringing in all kinds of game changer cards, and they started smoothing things over, rounding the edges like a polishing stone, making sure it all fits right. But over time, new powerful cards come along, and maybe some of those cards don't need to be banned anymore. Maybe some of those cards can now be reintroduced into the wild of the format and maybe start to shoot up in price, and maybe the next Commander unbanning. It hasn't happened yet. Usually it's around January. And this year I guess it'd be somewhere in January 2026. But people are ramping up. Somebody seems to know something or thinks they know something because there's a lot of money moving in this market. Take a look at this card. Now on September 23rd of 2024, the ban announcement for the following cards, including Dockside Extortionist, Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, and Nadu the Winged Wisdom, was so big. The backlash was so great that the rules committee that governed Commander resigned, gave up, gone. Wizards of the Coast stepped in, took over the format, and now we have it. Yes, the cards are still banned, but Wizards of the Coast is in control. Now, looking at Dockside Extortionist, this card has all of a sudden, in the last little week or two, had a massive sales surge across the board. All formats of this card, all the different versions have started selling, picking up massive amounts of sales. Card sales started like $8, and they started rising and rising. Now, if you take a closer look at the Dockside Extortionist, the version on the screen is the Commander 2019 version. One red, one other for a Goblin Pirate. It's a 1/2 creature that states, when Dockside Extortionist enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Think about all the treasure tokens you can make for this to just jumpstart your mana supply. This thing was huge. Some people thought it was broken. Some people didn't have a problem with it. Now, Wizards of the Coast has made changes since this happened, hasn't they? They have made changes to how the game is being played in Commander. We now have this massive market where it's got different levels of power. Now, if Wizards of the Coast is going to step in and unban one of these cards, it likely would be Dockside Extortionist or Jeweled Lotus in my mind. And a lot of people, when they saw in Avatar: The Last Airbender that we suddenly had Dockside Extortionist appear as a specialty card, different background, cool imagery. I actually like the art a lot for that card. When that came along, you had players start to believe that maybe an unbanning was coming. When you look at where Wizards of the Coast likely is going to do an unbanning, if they were going to do it, it would be January of 2026 is kind of the hypothetical timeline for them doing a Commander unbanning. So you look at this and you say, okay, this set comes out late November. That would give you December with the sales out there for Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Christmas season, all that. Then you go into January. If they do an unbanning, it would fit perfectly lock in step with that card existing. And this is where people are kind of putting the dots together saying, this is where it's leading. That's why I'm going to start buying all these different versions. And they really are buying different versions of the card, okay? It doesn't matter if it's the borderless edition from Double Masters 2022. We could jump into the list version of this card as well and say, look at the value. But honestly, What happens if it's not just Dockside Extortionist? Here is Jeweled Lotus. This was also banned. Commander Legends version. The low is $29. The market right now is $31. But if you look at the tail end of the graph, you'll see it's starting to see an uptick. That uptick is giving indications that players are in the belief that maybe these cards, maybe it's not just Dockside Extortionist, which of course hasn't been announced. Maybe they're going to do a massive unbanning. And that kind of group collective, that FOMO thing starts kicking in. Now, if we jumped over to the most expensive of the banned cards, which is Mana Crypt. Now, this card, the Eternal Masters version, has a low of $37.34 US. That's around $55 here in Canada. The market is at $38.85. It hasn't followed Jeweled Lotus. It's definitely not following the Dockside Extortionist, which means players don't believe this card is going to be unbanned. Not anytime soon. Of course, things can change. If you see more Dockside Extortionist sales, if you start seeing more Jeweled Lotus sales, people start getting that mass hysteria belief that this card's going to be unbanned as well. And really it comes down to a cold calculation of what you're willing to risk. How far are you willing to take the idea that you believe a card is going to be unbanned without any verified evidence? Is this the lowest this card is going to go? Is this the best time to buy it if you're going to flip or speculate on it? And do I even need a copy for my deck even if it did become unbanned? Because some players who had a large position in these cards, they kept a couple. They don't really have to go into the market buying them right now. But it might be nice if you're hoping to flip some value later on. Is this the bottom? When you look at Dockside Extortionist jumping back up to that $50 level, the high being $75, you can see there's still a little bit of a disparity gap. Still 1/3 of that price is still missing, which allows a lot of players to get in. And really, if you bought at the $8 level, the bottom of the barrel, you saved a lot of money if this card happened to become unbanned. Jeweled Lotus, you got around what, the $29 mark was the low. The high was around the $120, $130 mark, I think. I didn't really pay attention to that up part, but I remember it being roughly that high Canadian, so about $100 US almost. It has a lot of room if it became unbanned, and that allows a lot of players to speculate, to guess, to say, hey, if it's going to happen to Dockside, it could happen somewhere else. Now, for a lot of players who follow Commander, there's a big, large portion of that population that would love to see the Jeweled Lotus unbanned. It is specifically designed for Commander. Dockside Extortionist seems like the least damaging of all these cards in terms of the value expense if you had to rebuy it. And then, of course, if you go ahead and look at Mana Crypt, if it became unbanned, it would just cause a total... It would be quite the conversation in the world of Magic the Gathering because of how much of a bitter pill people had to swallow when it became banned and they had to sell off their copies, or they wanted to sell off, or they were hoping to sell off to maybe move into another card that they could use inside their Commander game to replace that particular piece that was no longer available. Now let's look at Wizards of the Coast. All these cards made them money. They were all marquee items when they had Master Series products, modern products. This was a big thing to have these things come back around. If they became unbanned, Wizards of the Coast would stand to make a lot of money. So it fits in their best interest. That makes sense, right? But do they really want to unban something this soon, a year and something later, after a big decision by the Rules Committee? Well, they've got the power level changes, right? We got different levels of the game now, where we can look at and say, what level are you playing? What power level am I playing? Oh, you're playing... Oh, I don't know. These decks don't match up at all if you've got those cards in there. That is now kind of in place, and players are getting more used to using it. So I wonder if that will become a factor, and if Wizards of the Coast would make a decision like this, or is it a factor in what players are doing right now, making the decision to buy a whole bunch of copies of Dockside Extortionist? Going in and buying 10 or 12 Jeweled Lotus is just, as you know, the hope, the glimmer of hope in a tunnel in 2026 that they become unbanned. It's a very interesting thing to see people dive into this market and make decisions like this without concrete evidence. I mean, many of us have done it in the past. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. Remember the rule. You want to win big, but lose small. So the people who are most likely to stand to benefit from this are the people who bought at the very bottom. They said, why not? I'll buy a couple of copies just in case. The just in case factor. People chasing the rainbow of all these cards on their way up in value, it's probably not the right thing to do. Remember, if they became unbanned, Wizards of the Coast as a company would likely have some kind of reprint getting ready. Now we look at something like Avatar: The Last Airbender, you say, hey, Dockside Extortionist is right there, man. That's what I'm talking about. It could be. I'm not going to say it's not, because I have seen this kind of thing happen before. We've seen it. We know. But at the same time, they haven't really said anything to give us that indicator. There's been no hints. No little, Easter egg things to kind of say, maybe. Maybe. I'm curious to think what you guys would do in this situation. Would you buy copies? Did you buy copies? Are you one of the people who's going to make this card appear in my top 10 this weekend because that many copies sold? Or maybe, have you picked up a couple of Jewel Lotuses when they were $29? Maybe you picked up a Mana Crypt at $40. These are the things I'd like to know. Guys, drop those comments in the comment section. And how would you feel as a person who maybe sold those cards into the market to have them suddenly unbanned in Commander again? These are the things we got to talk about. Thanks again for hanging out. But before we leave today's video, a reminder that tomorrow is my top 10. These are the hottest selling cards in Magic the Gathering this week, and I think it's going to be just huge. And then on Sunday, I have my live stream, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, but we also have the reserve list top 10 as the video of the day. Check out that content, see where these reserve list cards are going. It is very surprising indeed. Thanks again for hanging out. Thanks for being here. We'll be back tomorrow with another video. Hey guys, thanks again for hanging out today with another video with the Moxman. Can't tell you guys how important it is to make sure we give thanks to the amazing patrons of my channel, because those patrons' daily uploaded content is made possible each and every day of the week. So thanks again for supporting. Thanks for being here to my patrons and to my YouTube membership members. See you guys tomorrow. Welcome back. I'm waiting to see if you have your backstage pass ready. Show it to the door, then we can talk. Oh, you're done. All right, good. They're good? They're good? Okay, okay, you're here. Glad you made it. Glad you're back. I am, actually. I don't think it's going to be unbanned. There you go. Don't think so. Doesn't seem like the right time. But by putting that card in there, they put that idea. And it gets the conversation started. You know, Wizards likes to move in steps. And sometimes they tippy-toe. Sometimes they're just really quiet, ninja style. And was it Ninja Assassin? Remember that movie from like 2008? It was a pretty good movie, actually. I really did enjoy it. Anyway, beside the point, I'm off topic already. We don't edit these things, people. When you think about the tippy-toe effect, you start a conversation. You say, what can we do to get the Dockside unbanned? Well, let's put it inside of Avatar. Yeah, but they can't play it. No, but they can't play it, but it gets the conversation started. It'll appear in some Reddit groups and some other conversation topics. Some YouTubers, we'll see comments. We'll see how people feel about it. Then we can ask the Commander Committee. We can ask the community. We can put out little things and just see how things go. They're going to see the sales ramp. They're going to know that people are interested in having this card returned. That is how companies do things. It's not really tinfoil hat. It's just pure, psychological. You're seeing how the populace feels if you do this by putting a little whiff in the air. If that goes well, maybe they unban it next year. Maybe in 2026 they can do it. But I doubt it. I think they would wait another whole year. Would be my guess. So they don't feel like they had to reverse everything the Rules Committee did. And I still would probably unban Jewel Lotus first because it's specific to Commander. That's why it was designed. What do I know? I'm just a guy. Plays cardboard. Collects a lot of cards. Has a good time doing it. And gets to talk to you people. You don't always talk back, though. Not like my kid. He talks back all the time now. I'm just kidding. He's a good kid. Guys, see you soon. Ramble. Jamble.